Today, we're going to talk about a story of justice, but it's a story that wasn't measured in days or months, but in decades. It's about one single horrific night in Florida and the nearly half a century it took to finally find a resolution. 46 years. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's a whole career. It's a marriage. For a lot of people, it's an entire lifetime. But in this story, it's the agonizingly long wait between a crime that shattered a community and the final moment of consequence. You know, to really understand the sheer weight of those 46 years, we're actually going to start at the very end of this journey. The date is November 13th, 2025, and the final countdown has begun. The man at the heart of all this is Bryan Frederick Jennings. After spending decades on death row, the witnesses on his final day said he was calm, almost resigned. For him, time had just finally run out.
There's this almost chilling routine to these final hours. As Jennings was going through these last steps, the victim's family members sat watching behind thick glass, holding hands. They were there to see the moment that was promised to them almost a lifetime ago.
So to understand how they all got to that somber room in 2025, we have to go back. I mean, way back. 46 years to a warm Florida night that left a scar that just never, ever healed. It's the kind of nightmare that changes a place forever. You know, one moment, a child is totally safe in her bed, her parents believing the world is good, and the next, she's just gone. A frantic search then ends with the discovery that completely breaks the heart of an entire town. And the most terrifying part of that night, the evil, wasn't some stranger from far away. It was Bryan Frederick Jennings, an ex-Marine, a father, and a neighbor. The man who lifted that little girl right out of her bed and took her life. You have to understand, this wasn't just a crime against one family. It was an attack on the whole community's sense of safety. The shockwave from this one act turned trust into fear and suspicion, and it left a permanent stain that never really washed away. So Jennings was arrested pretty quickly, and the evidence against him was overwhelming. But a conviction and a sentence? That wasn't the end of the story. Not even close. It was really just the beginning of the next chapter, 46 years stuck in legal limbo. The judge didn't hesitate. Jennings was sentenced to death. But for the victim's family, that sentence wasn't a period at the end of a sentence. It was more like an ellipsis, leading them into a decades-long maze of the justice system. And this quote, man, it just perfectly captures the devastating toll on the family. While the rest of the world kept moving on, they were trapped. Every year that went by, every holiday, every birthday, they were still stuck in July of 1979, holding on to a grief that never let go.
So you're probably asking, why? Why 46 years? Well, it was this incredible maze of justice. Jennings' lawyers filed endless appeals, and all the while, legal standards around capital punishment were shifting over the decades. All these procedural tactics just created a cycle of delays, and each one was another gut punch to a family just waiting for the story to end.
And all of that brings us right back where we started, back to that execution chamber in 2025, back to the final resolution of a story that haunted so many people for so long. For 46 years, this family lived with this constant, unresolved pain. But in those final moments, something shifted. It wasn't about revenge. It was about finally closing a door that had been forced open for nearly half a century. When he was asked for his last words, Jennings did say he was sorry. But really, for the family who had waited a lifetime, what could he possibly say? There was no apology he could offer that would ever undo what he had taken from them. And it's interesting, Jennings' case, while so unique because of how long it took, was actually part of a bigger picture. It was the 16th execution in Florida that year, the highest number in more than a decade, which kind of places one family's very personal story inside a much broader legal process.
This is so important to understand. What the family felt in that room, it wasn't happiness. It wasn't some kind of victory. It was something quieter and probably a lot more profound. Just the end of a painful chapter, a sense of finality.
A sentence they waited pretty much a lifetime to finally say. Just two simple words. They carried the weight of 46 years of grief and anger and waiting. For the first time, the silence that followed felt like peace. And that really leaves us with this one big question. 46 years is an extraordinary amount of time. It forces us to ask, when justice is delayed for a lifetime, what does it truly become? Does it still offer the same peace, the same closure? That's definitely a question worth thinking about.